All right. Tyler's 3 minutes late.
Yeah, I just texted him, but
Okay.
might as well get going.
Yeah, when we get going, we'll start the August 27th Select Board meeting with Pledge of Allegiance. Flag's behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Steve Sorf's here, so we can all start now. Okay, manifests?
Manifests, I'll make a motion to approve the accounts payable manifest of August 12 and 27, 2018, and the payroll manifest of August 13 and 28, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Want me to just hand them down
Yeah, that's fine.
as I do them? Okay. We just initial these?
Yeah, why don't you just save that for,
Hold on to
save
these.
that for later.
Okay.
Yeah, because we'll end up doing,
Oops. For later.
Okay, that's fine.
give me those two, I'll keep them with, yep. Keep them with that subject.
Okay. Minutes. So the last minutes that we had were for the 7:30 minute, right? 7:30 meeting? But I don't know that, I think you sent comments, but I don't believe I did. I don't know if you did.
I don't think I've fully gotten through them.
Okay, so why don't we just defer that till the next meeting? Okay. Okay, boards and committees
Nothing until October
for budget?
for budget.
Okay,
Planning board, we met last week to go, there wasn't a lot, we were basically having a final vote on an application for a plat out on Route 4, and basically it passed. There were some difficulties, but they've made a lot of accommodation to mitigate those issues, but that's pretty much the
okay,
crux of it. There was some discussion of, they're anxious for us to get on some of the zoning law changes that have been, communicated about. So I said it's on our radar,
okay.
so.
And next meeting is when?
I believe next Wednesday,
Okay.
or the one after, I forget.
Okay.
But it's soon.
No other boards. I went to the concert last Monday night, and last Tuesday night, great concert, and the 300th celebration committee was out there selling burgers and stuff, so
Hot dog and veggie burgers. Yeah,
it was exceptional.
and we average over 100, an average of 100 per concert this year. It's outstanding.
I heard that. I think that's phenomenal.
And it's really nice outpouring in the town.
It was very nice. Yes, it was great.
How was the attendance
Well, he just said,
concert? That's how much they made.
no, he's saying they're averaging 100 people per concert.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes.
Cool.
And I
Yeah.
think they broke a record, well over 100 that particular night.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was great. It was wonderful. Okay, town administrators report.
All right, since we last met, we have received the results of the PFOA test that we did at the landfill and surrounding residences' wells. Overall, good news. We didn't find anything in the surrounding wells in the way of PFOAs. In one of the 8 or 9 we tested, we found something called a PFBA, which is a different kind of different common chemical that is not a it's not subject to any regulation or anything. It's not identified as a hazard. It's just something that gets tested in the same panel. So could be sourced by lots of things that had nothing to do with the landfill. So there's a whole lot of things that could cause that. But other than that, perfect scores off-site. The on-site test confirmed that we do have high levels, you know, that we were confirming that with that second
Yeah,
round
so there
of
wasn't
testing.
much difference in the
No.
test results?
No. So that, you know, the important thing is that the drinking wells are clean, straight zeros across the board on the PFOAs, so that was great news. We do still have the on-site, you know, the on-site situation it's a contamination, it's pretty high numbers, so we've communicated with the homeowners, they've all heard from our engineering firm last week, and DES has also got the results. We coincidentally, simultaneously have our groundwater monitoring permit renewal application in with DES right now, so we're expecting that they will come back to us with some guidance or request of us related to the PFOAs. We don't, you know, this is still an emerging thing, so I wouldn't want to speculate what they're going to ask us to do, if anything, right away. We'll probably see a increased monitoring regimen of some sort, and I don't know what else. As that science develops, we'll see. So, so that was the best news I'd heard in a while.
Yeah.
As you just heard, concert series wrapped up last week. It was good. We were counting over 100. I think 3 out of the 4 nights. Camp wrapped up last week. Also a successful summer. The move to the school for the bulk of the kids seems to have been quite popular with the families and worked out well with the school staff and our people. So I think we're optimistic about doing that again next year.
Good.
The one open legal issue we have, Gennady versus the town of Nottingham, a tax abatement appeal. That trial, that bench trial, was Friday. It went a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon, so it was a full-blown production. We will now submit, I don't remember the legal term, closing briefs or whatever, the written synopsis of all that is, and probably be waiting another couple months or so for a decision on that, but I think we're getting closer to the end anyway. And last but not least, the solar panels on the roofs of this building and the fire station are now producing electricity. I went out and flicked the switches today, so
Nice. Nice.
that is behind us. Now we just wait 6.5 years to buy them, and
How did they work out the financing finally?
I know they found some investors. You know, we don't care. They figured it out and held up their end of the deal. So shortly, probably within the next few days, we'll have something, a link on our website that you can go to and watch what's actually being produced.
Oh, cool.
You know, so you will be able to show people what it's doing. And you'll probably see some media from Revision Energy about it. They've been chomping at the bit to brag about it. So. You'll see something from them. Town of Stratham just went through the same thing we did, and we're in the same boat as us in terms of waiting for that closing piece. So you'll probably see something about them too. And I think that's all I have.
That's all that happened while you were away?
That's all. No, that's all that's worthy of this report.
Questions for Chris?
No.
All right, well, I'll acknowledge the elephant in the room. And, you know, I think half of my neighbors are here because they want to talk about what happened on Mindle with regards to the culvert and the washout and the repair that was halfway completed by Raymond. And I think most of you have gone out and looked at it and had a chance to see what it looks like. I expressed to everybody that I thought it was a dangerous situation. And I know folks here want to comment about it, so if you guys are willing, I think we should give them an opportunity to speak.
Absolutely.
Okay? So,
Agreed.
whoever, come up to the mic, sit at the table, state your name and your address, please.
Are we recording? Are we recording for minutes and all that?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Hi, my name's Tom Duffy. I'm at 28 Tuckaway Shores Road. I use Mindle to get in and out. And I was very excited when I got the notice from the town. And then I even arranged to take my kayak across to my neighbors and come out, in and out that way, park over there. My basic question is, apparently Raymond decided not to participate, is the way I understand it. I haven't heard it from anybody official. There's probably a lot of rumors about it, so I thought I would ask, is there an alternative plan for Nottingham to take on the work, and if so, what's involved, and what permissions do we have to get? It is a right-of-way that we've been using for many years through the town of Raymond, and I'm not even sure who actually owns the road. I don't know if it's Whitney, or the Whitneys did, or the Lake Association owns, the association owns part of it, at least the part in Nottingham, so I'm not really sure what the status is. So I thought I would ask to see if there was some sort of an alternative plan, given, I know you were away, Chris, so you didn't have much of a chance to address it.
So there's no plan, right? There's no plan. And everybody knows what a sticky situation this is, right? So the facts as I know it, you guys can jump in. Facts as I know it are that part of the road is definitely Raymond, right? That is a private road in Raymond. From roughly the fork in is Nottingham, where we all are. That was declared emergency 911, right? And so hence the town.
Emergency lane.
Yep. Town's, empowered to continue to plow and sand that part of the road, maintain that part of the road. What I find curious is that Raymond did half of the work and then all of a sudden became aware that it was a private road. That was curious to me, that for all these years that they didn't know that it was a private road. And so it's a tricky situation, right? But what do we do from here, right? And I'm interested to hear what some of the folks on the board have to say, because we can't leave taxpayers hanging out there, right?
Yeah, so I'll just share, I shared this with Chris. So I spent some time this weekend and looked at the lots that are in Raymond to look at the deeds. And from what I could find, most of the deeds don't reference any ownership. Some reference common way. There is one property which was subdivided in 2000 and 2006, and at that time the town of Raymond did require the landowner to sign a waiver.
So that's a Raymond resident?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this, I just looked at Raymond, I didn't
Yeah,
look at
okay,
Nottingham.
yeah.
There is, in one deed, a reference to the land of Pawtuckaway Associates, but I could not find anything further. There also is a reference in a very old deed, which I think is to Pawtuckaway Shores, Inc., which I think was a large subdivision. So I suspect,
Never heard of it.
yeah, I suspect that because that one liability was signed between the landowner and the town of Raymond, that's probably what they did was, again, we need to talk to Raymond, but it looks, what I would piece together is that they did enough to get passage through and then left it after it washed out. So that's why they started.
You think they did that just because of that one from a?
I think what they did was they did it because they needed to get emergency vehicles over there, but as far as doing anything further.
Looking at it now, though, you have to agree that it's difficult. It is a risky situation to try and move emergency vehicles over that.
Oh, the winter will be.
I'm not gonna
particularly
comment
problematic.
on that.
Sure, fair enough, but.
A couple of other notes that may help your understanding of how we got to where we are. I'm pretty sure the Raymond response at 10 or 11 o'clock on a whatever night that was, a couple of weeks ago, was a pretty standard emergency response. We got a road washed out, and people that live on the other side of it, we're gonna go and we're gonna fix it because we know it's in Raymond. And whatever middle of the night operation they have set up just runs itself. You don't need a whole lot of thinking in that situation. You just go do. That's probably what they did. They did a pretty good job of it, because you went from having no road to being able to get through it in the course of, I don't know, a few hours. When it comes to a more serious project, which this probably is, that they were considering, that would move up the chain, and the other questions would be asked about what's the history of this road? Why don't I ever think about this road? It is in Raymond, it is private, but we, by long-standing arrangement with them, the town of Nottingham has plowed the Raymond portion of that road. We do have little swaps like that all over the place, where it's just more convenient for one town to do it. And the plow routes don't always line up to the town line, and this is a situation like that. So I think that's probably how it came to be wait a minute, we can't do this. Because they put a lot of effort into planning it and reached out to us. We were working together to plan their project. And then they came to realize that they couldn't do it because of its private status. So I think that's how they got to where they got to, from my conversations with them. If that helps, I don't know.
I'm still suspicious.
Well, there's a difference between couldn't and wouldn't. And just because it's a private road, it is a designated emergency lane in both towns. So they
Not in Raymond.
It's not in Raymond. If it were designated,
emergency roads in Raymond?
no, if it had been designated an emergency lane in Raymond, their options would probably be broader.
I see.
It has not been designated as such by the town of Raymond. So that prohibition against spending public money on private property, which is a global thing, and it applies to roads as well as all kinds of other things, that trumps anything else.
I remember being at the meeting in 94 or 95 or 96 when this town met and discussed the emergency lane situation, because the concern within the state, just to kind of get back to its roots, and a debate in order to pass that RSA, which alleviated the town from any liability, but allowed them to act on emergency roads. And the intent there, as I recall, because I remember some of the hearings, but the intent was for so that the towns could do something if they needed to or wanted to, but in any event, they had no liability and were not required to do it. And they, in any event, just because they maintained it, the argument was, if you maintained a private road, you've really taken the road as a town road. And we know that's not the way it works. You have to have a deed, and you have to have an assignment, usually subdivisions and so forth. So the initial reasons for it were much broader and really more in the state's interest for being able to serve citizens without having an obligation to do so, or actually having taken the road and now being responsible for it for all times. That's my recollection from 1996. I think that Charlene, I don't know how many, I know there's lots there. Tuckaway Shores Inc. is interesting because it sounds like, I don't know if it's related to the Whitneys, who were inheritors of Johann Brussel, who I think probably started the road back in the 30s. Mm-hmm. But in any event, it'd be nice to, if we have to do a title search, I guess we could do that.
It was in 1961, and I believe it was a company out of Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Was Tuckaway Shores Inc.?
Was Pawtuckaway Shores Inc., yeah.
So, yeah, they had, I don't know if it was Cambridge, but I know that those original folks they were actually wood carvers and so forth down in the Boston area. But I think it would be interesting to see how many actual homes are built on those Raymond lands. I think there are 4, but I didn't knock on the doors and count them and ask them where they live. Whereas there's about 40 subdivided properties, plus or minus, in the Nottingham side, and about 30 of them are developed. So the ratio of people that are affected by this is considerably larger in Nottingham than it is in Raymond. So it may create justification for more of a need to at least address it. It's probably too early it may be too early in this discussion to figure out if anybody's figured out what it actually costs to do the work. You know, estimates can range from, depending on the contractors that you call, can range from anywhere from probably $10,000 to $40,000, and you know, that may be a factor in your consideration. But I thought with everybody here, winter's a couple of months away. I think if we're careful and sober, we can probably get back and forth across what's there now. But as soon as there's any snow or ice or any kind of weather, if there's another storm or another washout, that's going to be very, very, very dangerous and very difficult. And so one way or the other, we need to address it. So I guess I'm requesting that we figure out what steps are needed to allow the town of Nottingham to make that happen.
Is there anybody else who wants to, I'm not trying to get rid of you, Tom, but
No, that's right.
Thank you, Tom.
All I really wanted to say.
Herb Calvato, 2 Tuckaway Shores, and I'd like to point out that what's there now is not gonna last. And if you watch it, it's already starting to erode. I've looked at it for the last 4 or 5 days, and on one side, there's already about 2 inches gone away. If that's the rate, we get a big problem, and it's gonna go away quick. So as far as putting big trucks across that, I don't think you want to take that chance. That's what I've got to say.
thanks.
Hi, Nancy Smart, 26 Brussels Road. Just to give you a little background, just for the Tuckaway 8 Shores, Inc., my understanding is that it was created back in the 60s, and it was, the Brussels still owned all that property, but the neighbors in the neighborhood wanted to have a way to formally come together to help maintain the beach and the boat launch that we had. I don't believe that we own any of the roadway as an association, so that's not under our purview. And just to give you a little history, back in, I believe it was the spring of '05, when that culvert needed to be replaced, it was actually the town of Nottingham that did undertake that task. I know because I was involved with one of the trucks, and it was quite an undertaking, but it was kind of under their purview. We had worked prior to that from further up on that road with the town to widen it at the time to help get trucks down there for maintenance, for plowing and things like that. So we've been willing to do that and work with the town in the past. So it does service a lot of people, and we do have some elderly neighbors that I'm very concerned about that have had more than one visit from rescue, and that as a healthcare provider is very concerning to me that we're not going to be able to get somebody down there if we need to. So I do think that getting that is one aspect that we need to look at, and then maybe at some point in the future we need to think about opening that fire access road over to Moore's Road, and I don't know if that's under your purview or not, but just to throw a little food for thought out there.
Just
So-
that piece of it, Nancy, that's private property.
It is, that's
Yeah,
what I wondered.
It's private property.
Yeah, okay, so we'll,
not private property.
yeah, that
Yeah,
was my
it
understanding,
is.
and that's why it got blocked off, so I didn't know if that
Okay,
was-
so let's take one issue at a time.
That's another issue for another day. So
Yes.
anyway, I would just ask, add my voice that I really do feel like there's an obligation on the town to serve its citizens by fixing that road. Thank you.
Lauren Charette, 21 Brussels.
In any conversations that you had with the town of Raymond, did they give any explanation as to the actual work that they performed the night of the event and what their strategy was?
No, I don't recall anything. I didn't talk with them until a couple days, day after or something. I didn't talk with them that night. I talked with their dispatch that night, and they said, yeah, we got it under control. So that was, well, I suspect what they did is drop some fill in there and push it around and, maybe take a piece of the existing culvert out or something, I don't know.
So I was there. I was one of the ones that was trapped on the road, couldn't get home for a couple hours, and I stayed and watched what was happening. My concern is I feel that they pulled the culvert out, the big chunk of it that's sitting by the side of the road, and pulled out some of the boulders. And I think that when that happened, and I'm not an engineer, I'm not speaking from any professional perspective, I'm just speaking from living on that road for 28 years and watching how that culvert works and watching it happen once before. I feel that pulling that out actually did more damage to the road than what was actually happening. The water was receding until they came down with that truck or the tractor or whatever and started pulling it out. I felt that if they had just cleared in front of the culvert and let nature do its thing and let the water go, we wouldn't have had the washout. The right side of the road is the worst. And what happened was when they pulled the culvert and the boulders that were holding it together, the water really rushed.
Right side going which way?
Oh, I'm sorry, coming off of Mountain Road and coming in. And you can see, I think we've already lost a cone from the washout. I think it's already gone. We did. And so you can see the space. And the water at that point, like I said, had already been receding, really started rushing up over the road and basically swirled around and started wiping out that side of the road. And I stood there watching it happen. And at that point, the water level came up so high that anybody that was standing there, including the police officer, we had to back up because the water now was rising again, whereas it was already kind of doing what it should have been doing naturally. So I was just curious if they had given any explanation as to, I feel like they made it a little bit worse than what it needed to be. So, right. Thank you.
Gary Potvin, 6 Tuckaway Shores. I guess my question is for you, Chris, directly. You yourself just said that there's kind of a lot of puts and takes between the towns and areas, and you admitted that the town of Nottingham does plow the entire road. Why does this not just qualify under the part of the puts and takes?
We don't have any arrangements with anybody that, I'm just walking around the borders in my head to make sure I'm saying the right thing, where we do any kind of road work on the roads. Plowing is the swaps that we're doing in a plowing arrangement are usually mostly about the route design and turnarounds and things to just make it easier for the physical truck to, where there's easy places to turn around. A lot of times in both towns, it's the same guys doing the same routes over and over again, and these things kind of evolve to where, okay, I'm going to do this part of the intersection, and when I come back, oh, look, he already did the other part of it. It's not really formal. It's just it's just kind of evolved over time. Sure. And so there's not much of in those smaller little things where do you drive your plow truck 100 feet further here or there, there's not really a big cost implication in that, so it's easy to just kind of do those things on the fly, informally. Maintaining a road is the reason it doesn't happen with those swaps is probably because it's hard to even out the costs on those things. I think that's how it probably evolved to be like that. This case is different where it's private, and that changes everything.
Informally, there's no reason that the town couldn't do it, just like they do the plowing, is the real answer.
No. No, even the swaps are probably not ideal in a pure legal sense. from a liability point of view, if, say, one of our dump trucks got in an accident on the Raymond section of that road, you know, it's doing its job, it makes sense, but you could probably find a lawyer that would make us think about that. So it's not that simple to just say, well, you're plowing it, why don't you pave it, fill it, grade it, whatever else you do to a road, do the ditches, all those things. So, and that's driven as much by cost as anything.
So that's the real issue, is the cost.
No, the real issue, the underlying issue are the legal questions.
Do you know how many homes are back there?
There's about 40.
That's right, 45 serviced by that one road. Do you know what % of Nottingham's tax revenue comes from those?
I'm not gonna be the one to argue fairness with you. My job is
wasn't
to
my
tell these
question.
folks what the
question was,
legal
do you
implications
know?
are. Do I know what percentage of the tax base those 40 homes produce for the town? I don't, I could figure it out, but,
Yeah, I think, Gary, that the board is well aware of the percentage in general of tax revenue that comes from the lake roads, right? I mean,
With no additional services, right? We just get taxed extra for having the view in the water, but it doesn't cost the town anything to have the lake in it, is my understanding. So, and if you take a look at the, you know, it's the population back there, how many people have school-age children in there? I don't know, but I would reckon and guess that it's probably less than half a dozen or so, which means we're also funding a big chunk of the town's school bill, that we don't use those services. So asking for a small road repair doesn't seem out of the ordinary, number one, and number two, they've done it before. Thank you.
Well, my name's Karen, and I live at Pawtucket Shore Road. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I had a need for an ambulance just the other day on the 21st. The 22nd, I did not feel comfortable to have the ambulance come to my house because of being able to find the place. So we drove all the way to 156, and there was a cop, and I had my husband pull over, call the ambulance, and this was when I felt like I could get some help, but not till I got to 156. So, I mean, if I can't get an ambulance in there, this is never going away for me, and you know, an ambulance needs to get over that piece, just like all the oil trucks and everything else. But mine was a life and death situation. And the only way I made it was by going downtown to Raymond and going that route. I don't feel comfortable with the Nottingham being able to come and rescue me, basically. I don't know if anybody else has those same feelings, but just wanted to put my little 2 cents in. Thanks.
thank you.
Bob Gibbon, 11 Mendel Way East. So as you can see, a lot of concern on this side of the table. And I just have a simple question, which is, what's the board's strategy and timeline? Because we're concerned about that, you know, the road is going to wash out in a matter of weeks or so, or we don't really know. So just a question of what's your strategy?
so there is no strategy or timeline right now, Bob, and this is, like, I know you're,
First meeting.
yeah, this is the first
Okay.
meeting since it's happened. There's a lot of thorny issues, as, you know, Chris pointed out, which, I mean, you're fairly new, so you're just learning the challenges with it. The reality is that the road is not, that portion of the road is not in Nottingham, right? So, you know, Nottingham isn't legally under any obligation to take care of a part of a road that's in Raymond. It's Raymond's call, you know, it was their decision that they're saying it's a private road, no, we're not gonna take care of it, right?
So that's a statement, and they're making it quite clear that this isn't our problem.
Yeah, they had scheduled to repair it and then said, you know, no, we're not gonna do it because it's private. So there's a bunch of, you know, very clear things here, and this is the first meeting, this is the first time we're hearing from people. In my opinion, and again, everybody on the board knows I have a vested interest as well, I think we have to come up with, you know, is there a creative approach, or is there something that we can do to help these folks? So there is no strategies, there's no timeline
right.
at this point.
And can I just
Yeah,
add?
go ahead.
I think that this solution can't be done just by this board. I think that your voices need to be heard. Raymond needs to hear your voices as well, because that's gonna make more of an impact, I think, than us, because when people speak, action happens. And so I think that it's great that everybody's here and we're hearing everybody's input and concerns. But I think Raymond needs to hear it as well. We can certainly communicate it. We will certainly communicate it, and we will certainly try to get this addressed. But I would encourage you all to go speak to Raymond as well.
And how would we do that?
So,
At their next select board meeting, or start calling them, or writing them emails.
so I just assumed that you as the Board of Selectmen were kind of representing us and communicating and trying to
We can.
negotiate something, because, again, we don't want to be heavy-handed with the Raymond, but I believe that their responsibility is to fix that road. There's a state RSA that they have to make it passable for emergency vehicles. So,
Well, there isn't though, there isn't, and that's where we have to be careful with our facts. Because if they're viewing it, and correct me, but they're viewing it as a private road, that means they don't have to do a thing. The reason that Nottingham does it is because our portion of the road was declared an emergency 911 lane, an emergency lane many years ago. And so therefore, the town does plow, maintain, grade, that kind of stuff, because we've done
And
that.
as a classification of an emergency lane, all that means is that if there was a tree that fell, and the town could go and cut it without landowner permission, so that a fire truck could get. If there was a boulder that fell, if there was a culvert that failed, we could go in there, and we could do that without the landowner permission. It does not mean that we are liable for that road and maintaining that road. It still comes down to who owns the road. And in this case, this road, it's unclear who owns the road, and so who is actually
okay.
liable.
So, and I'm new to town, and when I went to get the loan, the bank in Connecticut that I happened to be going through kind of freaked out a little bit that it was a private road.
Yeah.
So I had to do research and provide them the state statute that basically said that those towns that these private roads are in, if there are people there, that their responsibility is to have it, emergency vehicles can get through. And that's what I provided to the lender, and that's satisfied them. So if you have no objections, I'll call the Attorney General tomorrow of the state and tell them what I know and see what they say, if you don't have a problem with that. Okay.
You can call whoever you want.
Okay,
at
well,
whatever
I
time.
just,
Yeah.
that's why I want to know what the strategy was, because I didn't know if you wanted to try to work it out with Raymond first before you brought the state in.
Well, I think, so I'd be curious to see where you found, which RSA you found that said that, because everything that we have read and believe and seen legally just said only if it's an emergency lane, which again, you gotta remember, it's not in Raymond. At the fork where the town line is,
What's not in Raymond? The culvert?
the culvert, that part of the road that is in Raymond is not an emergency
Oh,
lane.
okay, not classified, yeah.
It's not an emergency lane. So where you are is Nottingham, and that is. So that's a difference that, you have to think
But you
about.
can't get to it without getting through that road.
There's
so
there's that.
I think
Correct.
there's a certain reasonableness here. So if you don't have any objections,
No,
I'm gonna be
you
calling
can
the
do
Attorney
whatever you
General
want.
and just
But
see what they have to
I
say.
think, I think to Charlene's point, I mean, again, this board hasn't talked about it, and we're listening now, and we haven't heard from Tony and Tyler yet and anything. I think, and, I'm sorry, Ben. Ben, I do think there has to be some kind of a, two-pronged
Right.
approach.
Yeah.
Right? There's gotta be some kind of two-pronged approach. So,
All right,
that's.
great. I'll give him a call and
And I think the other thing to just to realize is if we were to go in there and fix it, and whether we did that or not in the past, if we did it in the past, okay, then that could be classified as a misappropriation of Nottingham taxpayer dollars, because we were fixing a private road in a town,
Another town.
another town. So we still have that to contend with as well.
And I don't know the history, so the
Yeah.
town of Nottingham has repaired that before?
Well, it sounds like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, ask people about the Mother's Day floods. We'll tell you at the next party.
So it's not as easy as just going in there and fixing it. There's a lot to.
Yes, well, that's why I didn't call the Attorney General today, because I wanted to make sure I
Yeah, yeah,
didn't,
yeah,
you know, sabotage your plans of trying to work it out with Raymond.
Yeah, I mean, we have to talk about it tonight, right? The one thing to Charlie, and to your point, you know, you're absolutely correct. I think we kind of have to make sure that we're separating, in my opinion, we have to separate this into two issues. And I see this as an emergency situation. I don't see this as a long-term, you know, we've got to work out what's going on with the private roads and stuff like that. We may have to, but this is an emergency
But
situation.
we will need to seek legal advice as far as how best to.
I agree.
to-
That's
to
fine.
apply-
Yeah, that's fine.
Apply the taxpayers' dollars.
That's fine.
I
agree
think one
with
of the
that.
interesting legal questions that this raises is that because it's not an emergency lane on the Raymond side and it is on ours, is there any liability to Raymond by what their action or inaction that they compromise our ability to service an emergency lane on our side of the boundary?
Right.
Right.
Because there's no other access down there.
He's shaking his head no.
Be a good question for,
Now, put yourself in the Raymond Town Councilor's shoes. This, to that person, is essentially a driveway. It happens to access a whole bunch of homes, but if you're wearing the Raymond taxpayer's hat, this is a private driveway
Right.
in virtually every legal scenario you can think of, so.
and they're not gonna
that's-
wanna expend their tax dollars to fix that road purely for Nottingham's benefit. So I get that side of
They
it.
can't.
They can't, legally
Except for
can't.
the fact that they left it in a very dangerous state. They left it in an extremely risky situation.
They touched it, so at some point they have to have some ownership of it
Yeah.
if they go into,
Yeah.
I guess. So,
That's a subject for a whole nother meeting, but I
Well,
think there's a.
you know.
From a legal perspective, I think their liability would be quite limited by the fact that they're responding to an emergency. And the liability protections that protect us in the case of an emergency lane are very similar to those that protect them in responding to an emergency. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in that path as a way to solve it. Doesn't mean you couldn't pursue it, I'm just suggesting that
Yeah.
you,
so again, I just want to make clear, so does the board have no objections to me calling the state, or do you want to?
Go ahead, I mean, no.
Okay, all right.
Like she was
I just want to
saying,
make sure we don't open up a can of
No,
worms
no,
that we
no.
don't need to.
A multi-pronged approach is better, like we can engage with Raymond and HMA, you know, through our channels, but your channels are calling them, writing them, showing up to their select board meetings, in as many ways as we can crowd this issue, will be that much more effective.
All right, thank you.
Who's next?
Oh, excuse me, after you contact the Attorney General, could you just let Chris know what
What transpired?
what
their take
transpired,
was,
what they said, because I'd be curious.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
What that RSA really says, and who has responsibility.
Hi, my name is Glenn. I live at 4 Mindle. I'm a new resident, less than a year. First time I've ever come to any kind of government meeting at all.
Welcome.
This is a big night for you.
It is, and, you know, I will apologize in advance because I don't understand.
We can't hear you.
I don't understand political correctness sometimes. I know that you've got a job to do and that's how you'd have to do it, but if I get anything out of this meeting, I want to get the understanding that you as a group are resolved to find a way to get this fixed. That's all I want. Now, how can we do it? I can tell you, I'm not going to call the AG, but I am writing to my state representatives tomorrow and asking, you know what? This is wrong. And maybe we can hook the state in, because I don't know the date, but there was a firefighter driving a responding vehicle up Mindle, and they could not get the vehicle up the hill. And they had to call in the state, and the state came and took care of it.
When
salted.
was that?
It's since December, middle of December, but firefighter Dion,
I don't recall the state being called in.
well, I was told this, she told me that the state went and came and salted or sanded. I don't know, I'm just telling you what the firefighter told me.
Okay.
So any kind of hook that we can get, you know, to be honest, at this point, I don't care what everyone's perspective is on the possible legal things or the possible responses from Raymond. What I really want to hear or to feel is that the group here is committed to finding a resolution and not just jibber jabbering, with all due respect.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm your neighbor. I am also impacted by this, and it's a very, very difficult position for me, because I have all the same concerns everybody does. Unfortunately, I understand what the law says as well, and it's very easy for you to sit there and say, the law's jibber jabber, but our hands are a little bit tied in what we can do as well.
I get that.
You know. So,
That being said, for me to understand that you're committed to finding a resolution is paramount.
we're committed to trying. Right?
Yeah.
We're committed to trying, but we also have to do it within the realities of the law, right? Because the rest of the residents in town can come and sue us for misappropriation of funds, right?
The easiest solution is just for us to say, tell the road shed to go out there and fix it. And
Well,
it's
the other-
100% illegal.
The other
We could
thing-
all be expelled from these seats for doing that.
The other
Which might not be a bad thing.
there are 3 Raymond residences after the culvert. Number 24, number 25, and number 28. I know the people in 25 and 28. And so I imagine that during the course of walking the dogs or something, we'll run into each other. We can go and share our dismay that their town is not taking their interests at heart. Thank you.
Lauren Schragan. With the rate that the road is eroding at, is there someone of some authority that's going to be looking at the road to make sure that it is remaining safe to pass?
Fire chief said
Happen.
last week that he could get his trucks through there and that he would keep an eye on it.
Okay. And is there a set schedule time that he's going to be doing this under? Is he going to go every few days?
No set schedule. He lives less than a quarter mile from there, so
Okay.
he's fully aware of it.
And is there a strategy for when and if he determines that we cannot get vehicles down that lane anymore?
No, but there should be.
Yes.
There should be. We should talk to Jay.
There needs to be a
Hope we get-
contingency plan.
I hope we get to some kind of solution before that.
I hope so too, but I think if we're gonna be doing this approach where we have to go to Raymond and we potentially have to involve the town, I mean, the state, this could be a long process, and if we get any more rains and the more of the heavy trucks, we have, you know, oil delivery trucks, people are starting to get their seasoned cordwood coming up and down our road. That road is not gonna withstand that for a long period of time. I have no idea how long we are, you know, we already have addressed that. But it would be nice to have some sort of plan in place.
Yep.
I hope it doesn't come to that, but if we can't get emergency vehicles down that road, we need to know how we are going to be protected.
Hi, Richard Smith, 8 Mendel. Thank you guys for just hearing us out tonight. As neighbors, we're all really concerned about the issue of the culvert, and as a neighbor, I'm sure you are too, so thank you very much. I know we all appreciate the service that does come to the road, the grading of the road and the plowing, and as a new resident, I just assumed that since you guys were grading and plowing and taking care of the roads, it was a no-brainer. So I'm learning tonight that it's not as simple as it seems on the outside. I know too that it comes down to money, and in small towns, you guys are on budgets and things are appropriated and planned for in advance. There's not a lot of extra money just flowing around to repair something like this. I really think though that the materials and the labor that it would cost to fix it isn't that great, because you're talking about mostly gravel and stone and crushed stone and pipes and cement. So, and I think that the liability that comes with it, like if someone were to pass away because they couldn't get an emergency vehicle there, or froze to death because their electricity was out and service vehicles couldn't get up, the cost of that liability far outweighs the cost of repairing the road.
I'll be honest, it's not a cost issue. It's really not a cost issue in this case. It's really, legally who can do what.
I think it is a cost issue.
No, it's not really. I mean,
Then
if
why
we,
can't we just fix it? It's not,
Because we can't, we're legally
Because of the
forbidden to
legal
spend that
issues.
money
Because of
on
this-
private
it's
property.
the right thing to do, though.
It is the right thing to do, and it's also illegal, and it's a funky gray area.
Well,
I mean,
then
whoever envisioned
I agree
that,
with my neighbor to say that I would hope that you guys, as our selectmen, would represent us in getting this resolved, one way or the other, whether it's you guys or Raymond or the state, but just be resolved to making it happen for us, because that's what you guys were elected to do.
yeah, no, I think we would all agree. We have every intention of finding some way of doing that. No one's gonna be stranded out there.
Well, it's coming up winter time, and it's
I know.
getting,
yeah, we just,
I know things take time, so. And
we
this is
just,
the
we
first
can't,
time.
we can't ignore the legal aspects of it. Trust me.
Don't ignore the safety of our residents.
No, understood,
That's more important than the legal.
understood.
You know, if someone sues you for doing the right thing, then I think your lawyers will help you out. So, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Jim Breen from Brussels Road, just up from the culvert. I hear a lot of talk about legal issues. Is this coming from the town attorney or just from you folks?
It's from us having had these discussions and looked at this issue many times in the past and knowing what the RSA's say.
Because I've got to figure there's case law out there where two towns are having an issue with a road that is, one town is blocking it, not maintaining it, and the next town has an issue with them not taking care of that part of the road. There's got to be case law out there. It can't be just black and white that you can't spend money on a private property or on a town road, or on private road. I got to figure there's case law.
I think you'd be disappointed in the case law on a private road.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that we need to get some attorneys involved, town attorneys, to help us out, to
We can
find
do
out
that.
what our legal
can do
options
that.
are, whether it be suing Raymond, finding out who owns this property that this road is on. I mean, there's some phantom out there that owns that strip of land. Who owns that? I mean, somebody's got to own it.
That's harder than you think too, Jim, to figure it out.
I know, but there's got to be some answers someplace.
So there's that, right? And I agree, we should go and talk to the attorney about what options there are. I think
Yeah, well, I think we have to.
I think the case law of, town versus town, maybe you'll find. Town versus private road you may find, but town versus private road, that's a little more
It
complicated.
doesn't seem like it would be that unusual in New Hampshire with all these dirt roads.
Maybe not, but we can certainly look at that.
I think it's something that we need to do as a town, is get an answer for this. And I think the attorneys are the ones that
Yeah.
need to do the research. I mean, I appreciate your going out and researching as much as you did, but, I think there's professionals that can bite into this a lot easier than you folks can and get us some answers. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so, what do you guys think? It's just, to me, again, I think it's like, we gotta look at the short term versus the long term. But, Ben,
What's your name? Carl? What's your first name? Cal. I totally agree with what you were saying earlier in regards to the culvert. I myself have gone out there and taken a look at it a couple of times already, and I've seen the erosion that has taken place. I would really try to put pressure on the town of Raymond to try and fix what they've started. We have an obligation to our residents But at the same time too, we have a commitment to abide by the law as well. That being said, I think we need to start with Raymond. Maybe getting the town attorney involved, research it some more as far as like someone mentioned the road. But again, that's on Raymond's side. And this is where we're kind of on uncharted waters here, where, you know, we have a private road in another town, but in our side of the town, it's deemed an emergency lane, and we maintain it. To get to it, we have to go through that private lane. I don't think this is gonna be an easy fix. And I think everybody agrees that this is gonna be a long-term, I wouldn't say fight, but to find a solution. But I will assure you, and I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of the rest of the board and our town administrator, that we will work diligently to try to find some kind of solution to rectify this situation.
Tony, what are your thoughts?
I agree with, and I don't remember who said it, but this is primarily a life safety issue right now. There's definitely a long-term problem that needs a long-term solution, but right now the life safety issue is paramount. You know, I was out there Thursday night, and you know, I've got a mid-sized Nissan, and I was scared driving across that little strut. And just walking the edge, the soil was crumbling away under my shoes. And I'm looking at that little, what is it, a 2.5 foot culvert they got in there now? I mean, I've crushed bigger culverts when I was in the Army driving a 5-ton truck across. I can't imagine what a fire truck could do to that. I mean, I'll trust that, you know, the fire chief knows what can support the trucks and doesn't, but I was alarmed when I went out there the other night.
Okay, Charlene?
So I think the first thing we need to do is contact our attorney to find out about, okay, it's an emergency lane, the situation. Emergency lane, private road, town of Raymond. What's the situation? Is it case law? Second thing, can we use taxpayer dollars to fix a private road in another town?
Are there any circumstances that allow that?
Allow that.
Yeah.
And then I think simultaneously, we need to, I would suggest 1 or 2 of us, or somehow, I think Chris talked to the town administrator in Raymond, certainly, but I think that we need to go talk to the select board, and maybe 2 of us go and represent the board and talk to the select board in the town of Raymond, because it needs to get, we need to come up with some kind of solution. And if it means that Raymond needs to go contact those residents that live in Raymond and say, hey, you need to fix this road, I don't know what the solution is, but I think we need to hit it on multiple levels. Again, I think it's important that the people contact their representatives, the Attorney General, the town of Raymond too, because the stronger voices, the more voices, the more it will get fixed. I think this needs to be fixed certainly before the winter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Charlene. I do think that I think, Chris, you should have conversations. I'm assuming it was the town administrator you talked with before. Town manager, right? But I do think we should request a board-to-board meet with them.
Like a joint meeting, or just us visiting their meeting?
However it works out.
I would ask to go visit them in their regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah, I think if we can do it to do a visit, if it's, we would just have to post it if we all go, or whoever can go, but not delay it because 1 or 2 of us can't go, and that we just know that we're representing the board.
I would also like to make sure that folks here are aware of when that is.
That happens.
Yep.
I'm trying to look it up right.
Oh, we're on the agenda.
Seriously?
It says August 27th, and it doesn't say, but on your agenda, it's building permits, Class 6 roads.
Can you Skype us in with them?
Is that Raymond or is that us?
That's us, that's us.
That sounds like our agenda.
That sounds like us.
No, she said it's New Hampshire Selectmen meeting. They're
So they must
Shall we
meet,
all just pick up and go?
talking about this as well. That's funny.
interesting. Load them up, load them up. Okay, so three things, you know. First, Chris, I do think it would be great to make sure that we have a Jay, I know he's out there, but let's let him make sure he's keeping an eye on that every couple of days, particularly if there's a rain.
Yeah.
Because Cal's absolutely correct, those cones are tipping and falling. I do believe we should contact the attorney as quickly as possible, you know, make sure he's aware of the situation, and I'm not looking for him to tell us what we can't do. I would like him to give us ideas of what we can do. Okay?
We need options.
Yep, we need options here. And then a meeting with, you know, we'd like to be on their agenda at their select board. And I know your hair, I know you're like, it's sticky all around, but we just gotta see what we can do.
No, I'm not.
Welcome back.
Yeah, right.
No, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, not for me to pass judgment on your priorities.
Are we allowed to ask questions at this point?
Yeah, sure, go ahead. We're not that formal here.
I'm just curious, has anybody actually measured the width of the road at any point, and should we be doing that to actually document?
I was actually thinking of that, and
A show?
I would bet good money that it's thinner now than it was when I drove over it Thursday.
Yeah,
Yeah, it definitely is.
yeah,
Just in my car.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, we could come up with a rate of erosion and figure out the point at which it's not gonna be wide enough for any vehicle to legally pass.
I think the person to do that would be Jay.
Jay,
So
If
can we
he's
just
gonna go
actually
out there and look
tomorrow
at it.
ask him to do that?
I mean, see what he says.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be nice if he went tomorrow and took a baseline. It's not a baseline anymore because we lost, but at least we know where we're at now.
and remember too, the lateral wheelbase on a fire truck is wider than a standard civilian vehicle, so
Yeah.
that's gotta be taken into consideration.
Okay, so 3 actions. Everybody good with that?
Should we make a point of 3 of us going to Raymond in case an opportunity for a decision comes up?
Yes.
That's a good idea.
Yes. We'll just, look at the dates.
It sounds like their meetings must be the same as our meetings, so we might have to delay our next
the-
meeting timeframe or go to the end of their meeting anyways.
So the next meeting would be the 10th,
If they're meeting tonight, then their next meeting
would be the 10th, okay.
We could ask them to reschedule.
Unless we call us, could we call it as a work session meeting? Joint work session meeting and try and get something scheduled sooner?
Something ad hoc.
Yeah, if they're willing to do that, you certainly have the ability
Let's
to do
ask that.
You might find that each of you sending a non-quorum would be just as effective and faster. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I do like the
I can
idea.
I can feel out the town manager and see what the lay of the land is there. I don't have any sense of their posture about this, other than
Right.
it's private property, we can't do it.
Right.
Well, and if they had this
Which
guy,
I totally understand.
We get it, we understand it too.
We didn't have to have a long conversation about that. It's,
Understand it.
yeah.
Totally understand it,
Yeah.
however. All right, is that good? Does that work for you guys?
Thank you. Can you just clarify what our follow-up will be with you, or how? You're gonna communicate with them, but you're officially not gonna meet for 2 weeks, correct?
Correct.
Here for us to come back, so we need to wait 2 weeks to hear an official response. We were talking about an emergency situation. I'm just kind of wondering if there's a timeline, very loose timeline?
well, I guess there's a select board member who lives on the road.
Yes.
Could you keep the communication? Would you feel comfortable with that?
I don't
Or
want to put her in a locked position.
Well, no.
So we will respect whatever.
It's not that I don't.
Yeah.
Could we,
So maybe what would be good is to have,
Door-to-door knocks.
maybe what would be good is for you folks to have one individual that contacts Chris so that it's not all of you, and I don't know if, how often you talk to each other or knock on each other's doors, but so that he's not getting inundated with a boatload of emails and phone calls and stuff, if there could be like one.
We'll step outside and organize and get in touch with you.
How about like just a small box on the town website? I mean, anything that we would say over the phone, we could put on the.
If they can get somebody to communicate amongst themselves, it would be easiest if we had a point to point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
Can I, before you break it up, can I just say one more thing?
Sure. Wait. Hold on, guys. Hold on. We got one more thing here.
Where's your gavel?
Hang on.
Wait, if you will hear me out, this is the part that I owe them, and you don't want to hear from me. If we're considering all scenarios, the neighborhood should also begin the early steps of preparing for a scenario where the neighborhood is responsible for taking care of the road. In many towns, this would never have been a discussion. This never would have, and we don't know what the legal opinions are going to be. One of the scenarios is that this board does not get to a point where they feel like they can act on it the way that they want to or that you want them to. A scenario that Raymond does not respond in the way that you want them to or that we want them to.
Yeah.
If we are truly preparing for all scenarios, you should prepare for the scenario that this becomes like every other town in the state with private property, and that the private property owners take care of the private property. And that's not a value judgment on my part. That is just my guidance to you as a neighborhood.
Yep.
If I had just walked into this and sat down here on my first day in town, I would say their town has absolutely no business doing anything with this. I understand there's history and safety and all that. This is, in one legal way of looking at it, a private property concern. And those of you that own property there, yes, you have an obvious need to get in and out of it, but you also have a legal responsibility to take care of your property. And you may be responsible for the road.
But it's not our property, it's Raymond's property.
No, it isn't. It's very clearly not the town of Raymond's property.
Well, then, it's not in Nottingham. We don't know who owns it.
We don't know who owns it. You bought property there, and this is not me trying to slap you down. I'm just saying, you bought property there based on some legal right to get to that property. Maybe you understood that, maybe you didn't, maybe it was clear, maybe it wasn't. I totally understand how that happens, but one of the scenarios is that the people that depend on that road have to maintain that road, and that happens throughout Nottingham, it happens in towns all over the place. So as you are organizing, just keep that in mind as one of the outcomes that we might get to, particularly if we look at this as an emergency situation and a long-term situation. It's going to be very difficult for the town to make the same commitment to this situation on a long-term basis as it is on an emergency basis.
And you will apply that same to all of the other private roads in town?
Yeah.
That's me telling the board that that's what their obligation is, and
That's what our outcome is, and we become responsible for our private property. And all the private roads in town just follow.
I'm not telling you, I'm just telling you that that's one of the scenarios that you ought to.
It would have to be applied consistently. Yeah, it totally would.
I would.
That's not a class 6 road.
It's a private road.
It's not any road. There is no legal definition of a private road. It doesn't exist in state law.
I would also suggest you go, every single one of you go and look up your deeds and see what your deeds say. Because there could be language in one of the deeds that might say something that helps identify who might be responsible. But I suspect, just on the research I did, it won't. But you can go onto the NHdeeds.com website and pull up your deed online and look at it. And if you don't know what your deed number is, you can go on the town of Nottingham's website, go onto the tax card section, and your deed is listed, your deed book and page is listed on your tax card.
The right-of-way issue is well established in that lane. It really is a right-of-way for the property owners when they do I mentioned you have the warranty deed, when they do a title search and they say it's okay, part of that is the lawyer saying you have the right to access the road. And they figure out what the chain is to get there. And in any event, if you've been doing it openly, notoriously, and continuously for 20 years or more, if one of us has, let alone all of us, then we have a prescriptive right that we maybe have to enforce in court. But that's how the law works on prescriptive rights, is that you have a good case on which justice can be afforded. So, you know, it's there. I think that another way to do this would be to find out who the owner is, yet another avenue, find out who the owner is, which I think I'll try to do, and see if they might authorize the town to do the work. Now, if they authorize the town, there shouldn't be a legal issue.
No, we still have an issue of spending town money to do the work.
That's the different story.
So
That's, I said legal issue.
That's a legal issue, not a money issue.
So that's another avenue. I think that would be avenue number 4 that we could do.
Now, the emergency way law, which you use to spend money on private roads, if there was a property owner on Tuckaway Shores that said, I don't want you crossing my road, what does the emergency way law allow you to do?
Yes, if the landowner of the road, many roads have owners,
Yeah.
yours does, we just don't know who it is. If the landowner does not consent to that emergency lane treatment, they can object and stop it. It's private property, and that trumps everything. Now, whoever owns the road may have obligations to easement holders down the road, which is probably what many of you are. You probably hold an easement over somebody else's land, and they are forever bound to honor that, you know, which is what you're calling a right-of-way to pass over that land. Whoever that person or entity is may have an obligation to maintain the road. They definitely have an obligation to let you pass over it.
Does the emergency way law speak to Nottingham only being able to spend money on property in Nottingham?
The law does not speak to fiscal dollars and how it gets spent. All it does is the emergency lane classification of an emergency lane allows the town to go in and, again, remove a tree that has fallen on the road, or put in a culvert to get emergency vehicles through that road.
And this property, which we don't know who owns it, is just private property. So an emergency lane law allows you to go in and spend money on that road because it's just private property.
Not in another town.
That's what I'm asking you. Does it say that in the emergency way law?
Under the road laws, as I've read them, like, we are responsible for our roads. And we
Yes.
only have authority for our roads. Raymond owns theirs, and there the two shall meet.
In the standard statutes about your roads. And I'm talking about the emergency way statute that allows you to spend money on roads which you do not own.
No.
Which is what this
It-
situation
yeah,
is.
it doesn't-
We're talking about spending money
When-
on a road owned by somebody else.
Right, but it doesn't give us any rights or authority outside the boundaries of our town.
When we raise and appropriate money for the town of Nottingham from the taxpayers of Nottingham, that money is to be used in Nottingham. That does not
To
give,
benefit the Nottingham people.
that does not give us rights to spend money in another town.
I guess
That would be a misappropriation of Nottingham taxpayer dollars.
Well, see, in the emergency way situation, you're spending money to benefit Nottingham residents and supply them with emergency vehicles.
So that's been illegal.
In Nottingham.
In Nottingham.
So that statute would seem to me could be applied to the connecting road to get you in.
It's not.
Well, that's a question that.
Yeah, that may be one of those dream scenarios that we get out of our attorney that says maybe we could make that work. We're really conflating two different laws and principles. One is the emergency lane situation, the other is thou shalt not spend public money on private, right, so, no, but I see where you're going, and that we will chase that path with the attorney to see if that is one way we can get around it.
Yep.
Just want to ask one more question, if you don't mind. Why can't we just go, like you said, hook up with Raymond and just split it and just do it?
Because it's not the cost issue, Karen.
I know,
It's not the cost issue.
Legally, it would be two
Over
towns.
and above the who lives there, who lives,
Well, that's what-
emergency, let's do it together.
Legally, it would be two towns misappropriating their taxpayer dollars. And then you would end up with two boards of selectmen being ejected from office for
Hey, Karen,
violating the law.
Honestly, if we could have done it that way, it'd be done. Right?
That's where we were headed until,
It'd be done, right? So I think,
So we'll follow up in 2 weeks with you, basically, and we'll have somebody will get in touch with you, but officially we will come back to this meeting in 2 weeks and have an on-records kind of
Absolutely.
solution or process.
Update or whatever.
In the meantime, we will unofficially organize, have somebody be a representative to stay in touch with Chris, and then individually contact our representatives, our attorney general.
Raymond.
And Raymond.
Raymond, yes.
the most effective people at talking to the Raymond elected officials will be those three people who live in Raymond. And depend
On
the
your
road
side
just
of the
like-
bridge.
That depend
Yeah.
on it just like you do.
Because then I've got to. Right. Okay.
All right?
Right, well, that's what we're gonna do. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for coming.
Yes, and I have. Oh, I have a video.
A little bit when John Littlefield sold that piece of land across the street from him. Going to the middle of the road on both sides. Raymond made him survey it right away. I don't know if that adds anything.
How much of the road, how far?
Raymond wouldn't like it.
Remember the tree that got knocked down?
Yeah.
I think he owns the pond to the tree.
I have a measuring wheel. I am going to check it tonight.
Good portion of the other side.
Just so somebody can know.
Raymond won't give Billy
I'm also not a firefighter.
Okay.
I'm not a firefighter, but I do drive the ambulance from time to
Gave
time.
him right away. So
Can
I
I
don't know if
guarantee
that
it right now?
Interesting. Okay.
I'm sorry,
I
I
didn't
did not
want to
drive
mention his name.
I don't care what the chief says.
Just another
That's what
piece
I
of
feel,
information.
that's my safety. and
They had him sign a waiver of liability that they weren't, but I'm seeing it, that he was responsible, He would be
Curious to see what you come
responsible,
up with for
not
measurements.
solely him,
I'll
but
measure it tonight.
that the town of
I'll
Raymond
measure it again tomorrow. I have an appointment in
It
the
was,
morning when I
it was
come
a
back. to measure it
liability
again.
waiver that the town is not
Just to see.
liable for any of the maintenance of the road.
I know you did some research.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway, one more piece of information.
yeah, thank you.
Let's see what happens. One of them.
It's never easy.
You know, I've been there 38 years. You know, if this had happened 20 years ago.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
If we could do it that way, we would.
Oh, I know.
We definitely would if we could.
Now everything is, brings in the lawyers. All right. Thank you.
We'll do what we
Thank
can.
you.
Okay. So, did you have a good vacation?
I don't remember my vacation. It's a very long time ago.
All right. Do we want to tackle building permits on private class 6 roads?
I'm gonna go to the rest of it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Take a break?
Yeah, let's take a
You
break.
want in 5 minutes?
Smoke them if you got them.
hot as hell in here.
Yeah, it is. All the people with the door, I don't know if the door was shut or not, but yeah, it gets stuffy. Of course.
Central air or anything in here? No?
There usually is. Yeah. All right. Did you go anywhere on your vacation, Chris?
Yep, went to Western Mass for a Memorial Weekend kind of thing for my father-in-law. Climbed Mount Monadnock. Canoed the Androscoggin a few days before that.
Oh, that's cool.
That was great.
That's neat.
Yep. Saw 3 bald eagles in an hour and a half.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Do any fishing? Do you fish?
Sometimes, yeah. I didn't this time.
Better care if I put this in.
No, go right ahead.
Yeah, better. Oops.
Wanna pop that window open?
Yeah.
Might be more humid outside than it is in here.
Yeah, it was the other night up there. Alright, I'm gonna prop it here and just aim it at us.
It'll cool down without 100 people in here too.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets real stuffy really fast with.
Nobody's gonna be able to hear anything with that way
Yeah,
on
so
like that.
Yeah, just keep, put it on low.
As low as you can make it, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Take us through it, Chris.
Okay.
No, we haven't seen this yet, right?
Oh, yeah, you have.
Yeah, he
Oh,
sent
wait.
it a while ago.
Let me
back
Call it
in
mine, so-
July.
Oh, the draft.
July 13th.
We have it?
I'm trying to remember, I think I've seen it, I just don't have it with me.
You want me to go make you a copy of it?
Yeah, he would need a copy.
I'll go grab.
I'll be right back.
All right.
How many am I doing?
I've got mine online.
I'm all set.
Yeah.
We can't talk about amongst ourselves.
No, we can't because the,
Unless we talk about non-town stuff. So I went to Prudence Island in Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island. If you ever want to like completely get away and disconnect, there's nothing on the island. There's no restaurants, there's no stores.
did you camp or stay in a little cottage?
No,
or?
we rented a place through, Airbnb or
Yep.
Where is this?
vacation. It's in Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island. And there's like, I think there's like 150 year-round residents, but like, you can go to the beach and be the only person on the beach because there's so many places to go. And
Well, I could go for that right now.
like, I didn't realize, like, I said to folks at work, I'm like, yeah, I'm back now, I'm just trying to figure out how I don't become another little, like, chihuahua yipping at everybody. Like, I didn't realize how wound up I was until I spent a week away, and then I'm like, wow, I feel really good.
Did you have to take a boat over?
Yeah, you take the ferry over, you have to bring all your
provisions?
All your provisions. I mean, there's a little store right at the
Yeah.
ferry that, one loaf of bread,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
gallon of milk kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how they make any money, but, yeah, we got, it's a lot less expensive than like any of the other islands, like
Check that out.
around, yeah.
How
it's-
far away from Narragansett is it?
It's, you take the ferry right out of Bristol, so it's right in the bay. It's like halfway between Newport and,
Thank you, sir.
Providence.
So electricity, but no connectivity.
Oh, Prudence
Yeah,
Island.
Prudence Island, yeah.
Okay,
They-
yeah.
I mean, they had a television at the place, but we didn't watch it.
Looks like a
They
gold
didn't, they
bladder.
don't have any, internet connection.
Prudence Island.
But,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
so
where
it was
Charlene went.
nice.
Interesting.
Oh.
That's cool. Good for
Highly
you.
recommended if you need to get away from the world.
It's this one that looks like a gallbladder?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Wow, that's very cool.
yeah.
All right.
Okay. I haven't read this in a while. So background, at some point in the last 8 months, we figured out that we were just completely missing a state law. We were not aware of it. We're not enforcing it. We were, for whatever reason, for several years, had an insufficient process around the issuance of building permits on private roads and Class 6 roads. In a nutshell, the law says that the select board has to approve permits, at least for new residences. It may go further than that, but that's the core of it on anything that isn't a Class 5 road or better. Class 5 road being a regular old town road, Class 6 road being a piece of Haynes Road, gravel pit road, a private road being Mindle Road. The purpose of that law is to protect the town from unwanted development or unplanned for development that then in turn creates demands for private road maintenance or other burdens on the town outside the usual planning zoning process. So that's what the purpose of the law is. We had been doing things that kind of got around it and still had some oversight of those things, but really did not fit with the law. This is outside of the zoning ordinance. Our zoning ordinance happens to prohibit those things as well. You can't build a new residence on a private or Class 6 road by the zoning ordinance. You have to get a variance to do it. This is really kind of independent of that. They end up going together, but Your policy, your authority lies in that original state statute that says you have to approve the building permits. You don't have a role in the zoning ordinance, so you don't get to make a policy about that. You're just not a part of that. That's the planning board and the zoning board's responsibility. It's included in this policy because the only way any resident is going to be able to make sense of this is if we show them everything all at once. So I think there may be some desire among some in the planning board that we change the zoning ordinance to simplify this at some point, but that's not going to help us today. We touched on this a couple months ago with a handful of permits on private roads that got caught as we were figuring this out. We didn't issue the permits without your approval, and we said we got to find a better way to do this. We got to come up with some kind of structure of how to do this, and that's what this policy is trying to do. It doesn't go all the way to saying this is what exactly you have to have in terms of a road. It doesn't go that far. It leaves that to you. We can certainly go deeper with it, but it's trying to lay out the kinds of things that you or a future board will consider when evaluating new construction on a road. I'm going to come back to section 3, which is exemptions. Section 4 and 5 is about the process that people will go through. 5A, B, C, and D are the things that we're looking for an applicant to give you in order to make a decision. Coincidentally, 5B, documentation showing ownership of a private road, if applicable, and an applicant's right to use said private road. This is trying to prevent the problem that we were dealing with 15 minutes ago.
Is that asked for by the zoning board now?
They don't have a set process by which they do this, and their criteria for evaluating a variance request are much different than the criteria that we're talking about here. So if you think about a variance request for your shed being too close to the sideline, it's treated just like that. If you want to get around the rules and get a variance to get around the rules, and the only criteria that the zoning board can use are set in stone in law and case law. It's things like, will you alter the essential character of the neighborhood? Will you reduce the value of abutting properties? Does the owner have a hardship if you don't allow them to do this? That's kind of a world all its own. The zoning variance thing it's a different set of criteria. So they can't necessarily think about all the things you can. They don't necessarily get to think about how easy it is to get a fire truck down the road. They can stretch their criteria, but it's pretty hard.
Oh, okay.
And they're really thinking about it in that one law that they have to follow.
Okay.
They've got to be pretty narrow-minded in how they look at variance requests.
Okay.
Or they're going to get sued. So this is trying to capture some of the other criteria that you logically want to consider when deciding whether or not to add development to a road. Can the road handle it? Is it clear who owns it and who's going to maintain it? Are you burdening that road too much with the added traffic or the types of traffic or what have you? Who's going to take care of the road when the culvert washes out 20 years from now? So that in section 6 is the partial list of considerations. That list comes, a lot of this is kind of copied from a few other towns that are doing this. This whole thing, I should have opened with this, but this whole document has been washed by our attorneys and the planning board and the zoning board for input. So they've all seen this and they've chimed in on a few different things, and everybody seems to be generally comfortable with where we're heading with it. That partial list of considerations are the types of things you started to talk about in those applications that you did a couple months ago. Those are the logical things that you need to think about when you think about burdening a road with additional development. So that's.
And that list of considerations are not things that are asked now by planning or zoning.
Correct. Planning has the planning board wouldn't get involved with somebody building on a pre-approved house lot. You have any empty lots in your neighborhood? Are there any empty lots left in your neighborhood?
Yeah.
So if somebody bought that and could get a septic design approved on that lot, the planning board would never see it. They don't get to approve that if the lot existed already.
Okay.
So they don't touch it.
Okay.
The zoning board would, within those narrow criteria, have to get involved. But there's a lot of these, camps or single lots or class 6 road parcels that could get turned into houses or house lots. And you don't have any way right now of checking that to make sure the roads can handle it.
I think you showed us a while ago what the potential that exists still on private roads for building.
Yes, there are, obviously people can create new private roads all the time.
Yeah.
That's not something you're going to control. But with existing private roads, there are several, I don't know, I'm going to say 20 or so already pre-existing house lots on private roads that have not been developed. There's still any seasonal homes on private roads that have not been converted to year-round homes. And then around Pawtuckaway in particular, and to a lesser extent, the other two lakes not so much, but there are 3 substantial lots around Pawtuckaway that have at least part of the way to get at them is through private roads. Some lots have access from both, but anyway. So what an applicant is going to have to do is to provide you with this package of information, and then by law, the planning board has to weigh in on it and give you recommendations. So in this permit application process, the applicant is going to go. They're going to apply for a building permit, provide a whole bunch of information that's going to go to the planning board. Planning board's going to make a recommendation on it, and they're going to come to you, and you're going to decide whether or not to issue a permit.
Wait, so I'm confused because I'm unclear on the role of planning because I thought, based on the previous question that I asked, that you said planning doesn't have a role.
Yes, right. So in this law that we're now going to pay attention to,
Yeah.
that law dictates that the planning board
Does
get
become a part
a
of it.
recommendation. It gets a crack at it.
Okay.
They don't have any authority to say yes or no,
Okay.
but you as the board have to ask them as a board for their
Yep.
input.
Yep.
I think the word is recommendation, but
Yeah.
and that's all it says. It doesn't say any more than that. They could make a big process out of it, or they could just kick it around and send you a note.
Yep.
That's up to them. And you can take their advice, you can ignore it, you can apply conditions or whatever
Yep,
you want
yep,
to do.
yep.
So, and so if, that's process one, that zoning process still exists.
Yeah.
That's running in parallel. If you decide that you do want to approve a permit to be approved, you can do so. You turn the staff loose to do that. We have the owner record that release of municipal liability, which says, I'm building on a private road, I'm building on a class 6 road, but I'm not going to hold the town responsible for that road. That's the thing that Charlene found in that Raymond case.
Yeah, yeah.
So that, and then the permit gets issued. So it's not an easy process, and when you layer on our zoning requirements on top of that, it's doubly onerous.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really what the law is spelling out that we have to do. And from a staff point of view, we'll move them along as fast as we can, but to get through 3 boards and 2 different tracks, it's not gonna be easy. To go back to section 3, the law that I've been talking about all along makes provisions for things that had been approved already before this law kicked in. They didn't want to add regulations onto pre-approved things are kind of, it's like a grandfathering. We don't like to use that word, but
Yeah.
so far, I have found 2 examples of things that are grandfathered by virtue of their age, when they were subdivided and approved, or how long they've been around and on the town maps. It's quite a bit of homework. We may end up adding to this list, or a landowner may convince us that they're exempt from this requirement, and we'd have to come back and add them to that list. But we know that the area around Nottingham Lake, which is Swan, Langley, Sherwood, and Little John, meets all of the requirements for that grandfathering, for lack of a better word, in the statute. And we also have a plan that fits that for most, if not all, of Tuckaway Shores. So Brussels, Mindle East, South, and Tuckaway Shores Road.
So that means that anybody who owns a lot on one of those areas that you've outlined does not have to go through this process.
They don't have to go through the planning board and the select board. They probably will still need to go to the zoning board.
Sure, they would have to anyway.
Right, which they'd have to do anyway.
Which they would have to do anyway.
Right.
I didn't find that plan, that 3375 on NHD.
There's something about the numbering of that. I had a heck of a time with it. Maybe you need the 0 or...
I did it both ways, and I did it with the
I'll find it
sign.
for you, because it gave me fits when I found it in a deed somehow, and it gave me a lot of trouble. I'll find it for you. But really what triggers that grandfathering are things that got approved years and years ago by somebody or another.
Yep.
That approval carries forward. And this is all pre-71. 1971 isn't in the law. It's a function of when the town of Nottingham adopted things. I don't remember even what, it was a ton of homework. I know it's right, but I can't explain why.
Okay.
So anyway, we may find more things that are exempt from that, but we haven't gone looking for them in that sense. We don't have any vested interest in doing so. So, I think I don't need to talk anymore about that. The very last page is really more for an applicant or for anybody else trying to follow the process of what do you do. There are towns that spend a lot of time and energy on these questions, Northwood being one of them. There's a lot of serious fights in the town of Northwood about this question. You see it jumps right out of the Board of Selectmen activity for them. They handle each one of these, and it's pretty contentious. And I think they have a lot of private roads, particularly around their lakes, but a lot of private roads and a lot of stuff that hasn't been developed yet. So our new building inspector came from there and was tickled that we hadn't really had to deal with much of this.
Yeah.
Because they get caught in the middle of it. But
Yeah.
So there's no mad rush for this, but every day that goes by that we don't have something, we run the risk of a new applicant coming in and not having anything to show them. So
I just got some wordsmithing kind of
Yep,
stuff.
yep.
If you want to go through it, and just, so on section 5, and again, I'm probably getting a little nitpicky here, but A, it says a survey showing. I'm just wondering if we should be a little bit more specific to say a survey by a New Hampshire licensed surveyor. Only because sometimes people bring back of the napkin type things. And,
Yeah. Aren't there different grades of survey as well?
well,
Like simple to more complex, more refined?
They have to have there's a certification, right?
Stamp.
That they have.
Stamp.
Stamp.
So maybe a stamped survey from a certified, New Hampshire certified surveyor.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost just pull something from the zoning ordinance or keep some consistency. And then the other question I had just on the sentence, right before A, is it says to be accessed only via private and Class 6 roads. Do we need the word only in there?
Yes, because if you can access the property by a Class 5 road, you don't need to go through this process.
Okay, all right. And then let's see, we got, okay, that I got answered. Then the other one, and again, this is kind of just getting a little hairy, under section 6. Blah, 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 blah. We say recommendations from the planning board, road agent, or safety officials. I'm just a little hung up on the word road agent.
Yeah.
Because a road agent, I couldn't find anything that says that a road agent is an elected person or an appointed person.
Different in different towns.
It's kind of used interchangeably, but
Yep.
I mean, I guess the question for the board is, do we want to use the word road agent, or do we want to say representative from highway department, or, you know?
We could say road.
Planning board, safety officials.
Can't you just say highway department?
Yeah,
Right,
sure.
or road agent, or
Just make it generic.
equivalent.
Make it generic,
Yeah,
yeah. And then just up at the very top, I mean, the RSA is really, it's for anybody pulling a building permit. And this kind of alludes to just permits for all buildings. And really, it's buildings, structures, remodeling, converting from camp to year-round. I mean, the RSA goes into more, so it's really pulling a building permit, or a permit of some kind.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm at the
very first line.
The very first line.
Of the whole thing?
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
necessary to spell that out, though, if it's referencing the RSA?
Well, I'm just trying to, and the reason why I'm asking is just for clear understanding.
Yeah, no, that's a good, we should flush that out and say, on the one hand, the statute lays out, says any permit, period. But the legislative intent and the purpose of the whole thing is about the burden on the road. It's really what it comes down. That's the underpinning of the whole thing, and your whole involvement is based on the impact on the road and the added protecting
Yeah.
or preventing some added burdens for you because of the road. So I think what you ought to say is that people that want a building permit to put in a hot tub on a private road, there's no business of coming here. It's a new dwelling is really what triggers the need for this kind of review. And I think you should be comfortable deferring remodeling permits and, additions that don't create new dwellings to just go ahead and issue those.
Because they still would have to go to the zoning board for the setbacks in the front.
If it's expanding the footprint of the building and it's non-compliant, it would have to go to the zoning board.
And the frontage is the big thing in the RSA. The road frontage is a big thing that's referred to.
Yeah. So I think what you ought to refine your concern to what are the things that are really going to change the demands on the road, and that's new dwellings. And conversions from seasonal to year-round is really a new dwelling, so.
ADUs, would that qualify?
I would put that in there as a new dwelling, and we just had something come up with our attorney, and yes, an ADU is a new dwelling, and that, you could very easily say that's gonna have an impact on the road.
What is it?
ADU, accessory dwelling unit,
In-law apartment.
in-law apartment, because that's more people, more cars,
Right.
more impact.
So do we want to put just something in there? That
Yeah, are you
references
comfortable with that
clarifies?
distinction?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that,
Okay.
but I think we just need to get clear.
Yeah, I'll
on
put
this.
I'll put some words in there
Yeah.
about what you defer and what you
Because you
tackle.
know that this is gonna, we understand it, but we're not gonna be here
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
forever, so just, well, maybe.
Okay. I will come up with a sentence in a couple places to reflect that.
And then the only other thing that, and not related to this, but in some ways related to this, I guess, is, but maybe not, so.
Is it or isn't it?
Tangentially.
It is not.
Okay.
What? Go ahead, go ahead.
Do you want me to say
Go
it?
ahead.
Okay, so we can create I found, there's an RSA that says, well, in the RSA, we can create a capital reserve fund for emergency lane work. I read.
You can create a reserve fund for darn near anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm
Yes.
just, from a budgeting standpoint,
Would it have a lot of picky provisions that would apply to
that
it?
would be whatever we determined that we wanted to make it, right? But just an FYI as we get into the budgetary stage, if we want to really get a true cost of.
You didn't want to bring that up 45 minutes ago?
I did not want to bring that up 45 minutes ago.
We don't really know what we're currently spending on emergency lanes now, so we'd have a difficult time sizing it, giving it an initial dollar value.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Just-
No, it's a good idea.
I saw it and I said, hey,
We plow them, we sand them, we
That's pretty
we
much the
grade them.
extent of what
That's
we
it.
do, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
that's all I had.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this, I go back and forth on this because it's gray, right? There's things where it's gray, like when you say, the existing condition of the road, okay, well, what does that mean? You know, and one board is gonna interpret that differently than another board, so, I mean, I guess it would be impossible to try and make it definitive, you know, and it's.
Well, you could be very, very restrictive and say that any private or class 6 road has to meet the same standards as a new subdivision. Because we have, we have what that is.
Yeah.
Be brutally unfair, but you
Yeah,
could do it.
I would, no, it was
And
just,
there are probably towns that say, no, you can't build on
yeah,
without a, planning board
yeah.
approval to get to a town,
I think the section 3, the exemptions and prior approvals, I think we just need to, that list, roads with known prior approval are listed below. I think we need to be confident of that list, and we should do a little more due diligence just to make sure that there aren't any others out there that should be included in that.
That's a bigger,
That's a lot of deed searching,
I would say,
right?
yeah, that's
I would
a,
say put this in
that-
place, and as we continue to find them and,
yeah, and certainly a landowner could
Yeah.
Could say,
prove
hey,
that, here it
yeah,
is.
okay,
And
yeah, okay.
that's the way most of these things work. I just happened to trip into these two, or was working on other things
All
around.
right, so we can
it,
just leave those and update over time as other people, others are researched or become known.
Yeah.
All right, so do you want to make the tweaks and then
And send it back to you.
we'll do a formal vote on next meeting?
Sounds like a plan.
Unless our next meeting is in Raymond.
Unless our next meeting's in Raymond.
We can do both. We can take the rec van.
Yeah.
Take what?
We can take the rec van.
There you go.
Field trip, field trip.
Oh, that's funny. Who drives? Chris would have
Chris
to drive
drives.
for liability purposes.
Courtney'd have to come.
Yeah, that's it, liability.
Liability purposes, yes.
Selectmen's meeting at the Tuckaway Tavern.
There you go. Let's meet him there.
We can film it, we got phones.
Town administrator rolls van. Takes out board.
All right, Chris, let's see what else we had. The NHMA policies, right?
Yep.
And there were questions that people had that,
Yeah, I forget which ones I forget exactly the numbers, but one was related to all the labor stuff. The other one was related to.
I think you replied
You
via me,
replied
though.
to those, I think.
Yeah, I sent you what I could do off the top of my head, and I wasn't at the meeting where you
Right.
spat your questions back, so I didn't know exactly what you were looking for.
We weren't really detailed. with
I
that.
figured that.
I don't think they
I
were
know
like-
this is not a topic that you
No.
want to spend a whole lot of time on. You can, a couple options. You can just, the ones that you didn't all say, yep, let's support that, you can just say, just don't support it, don't vote against it, stay out of it, whatever. you can refine what it is that you need for more information. I wrote to you and said, this is what I know, what else are you looking for on each of those things? I guess those are your options.
Last year or 2 years ago, you did the Excel spreadsheet. Are you thinking of doing that, or are you thinking? No?
Yeah, we sent you a checklist with, with a little, like a,
Yeah, he
it was
did.
a list of the subjects.
We kind of didn't go through that process.
Yeah.
We had it, but we would kind of all.
Was there the checklist that was with that attachment? I'm sorry, Chris, I don't remember
He
that.
did send it to us, but I think we kind of went through and there was nothing really
Nothing that jumped out.
that jumped out as something that we felt passionately we had to go one way or the other on, and that's where this list of questions came from.
But those were the only
Well,
ones that we were.
this is the email with his responses.
What date is that email? Because I couldn't find that. I went to look for that.
August 6th.
August 6th.
Yep. On the Lincoln Road.
My inbox and my phone stops at the 13th.
Need a bigger boat.
I think so. Oh, wait a minute, here it comes. Never mind.
So that one.
Ooh. Here we go. Got it.
I think that's the only thing that might be
This one?
concern for Tyler.
Oh, right, yeah,
August 6th. Okay.
yeah. I mean, what's,
And that meeting is what, the 14th of September?
Yes. Yes, you have time to punt this one more time.
kick the can down the road just a little bit further.
Not that you have anything coming up at your next meeting.
In Raymond.
Okay. I mean, I think we decided basically we didn't feel it was necessary to go through the whole spreadsheet process. If you do want to go back and revisit that, we can certainly do it, but I think there was nothing there that was,
What do you guys think?
I think in most cases, Chris is able to just use his best judgment representing us.
Any of you want to go to this affair on the 14th?
I can't. I think I checked. And did you see that there's a good workshop coming up on dealing with crowds?
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
It's a weekday.
It's a weekday, it's like 2 to 4, and I've already got it
14th,
scheduled.
is it September 14th?
Friday, yeah.
Friday, what time?
9.
an
and
all-day ordeal?
It'll go to early afternoon with a mediocre lunch.
I was in the Army for 20 years. Anything else is better than that. I may be able to go.
Okay.
So,
If you want to go, we will delegate you and away you go.
Did you find, you were on the finance committee, did you find it interesting? Did you get a taste for what other towns deal with?
Yeah, there's, it was worth it. It was, I don't know, I think I made 2 out of 3 sessions for the committee. It was a good mix of elected board types and elected, single point, like a
administrators.
treasurers or whatever, and staff people with expertise in a number of different things. So there was a lot of deliberation about each of them, and like, okay, how does this affect big towns, little towns?
Oh, that's
good. Do we all want to speak with one voice on this kind of stuff? So I really came away from the process thinking, okay, this actually is a pretty good product. It's kind of long, and it's really not a priority list for anybody who's really trying to set priorities. But it's something, gives the lobbyists something to work with.
I mean,
I learned some things on a few
Do
areas.
you want us to send all these?
Yes.
Every
Go ahead,
single
we'll do them all.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we will, it sounded like it was Tyler's questions that needed to get flushed out.
I think you need to touch base with
So I'll poke
Tyler.
him,
Yep.
and then we'll put this to bed finally at your
Yep.
next meeting.
Yeah.
And if there's a faster way to do this 2 years from now that you've identified, you let me know. We all spend too much time on it for
Yes, we do.
what it is.
So, did you have anything else, Chris?
No.
Okay, the town clerk and
Yes.
the other night, I had a conversation with Gunnar about it.
Yep. Just get a little backstory
Yeah.
for those listening in town. You can give it.
No, go ahead.
Just, we had an incident with a problem customer at the town clerk's office. Town clerk, deputy town clerk, really felt uncomfortable and unsafe in dealing with somebody who was being a little belligerent. And documented it for us and asked the PD to look into it. We do record what goes on in there with video recordings, and so they investigated it and didn't come up with anything criminal, but just another case of what can we do to make the workplace be and feel safer for the people that are in there. These things happen often when there's nobody else around, so that's when it's particularly
Right.
Challenging. It's not common, but it does happen where people get belligerent or unpleasant. It happens more often in the town clerk's office than anywhere else because more people have to go to the town clerk than anywhere else. Everybody that registers the vehicles got to go there, so they have contact with a much deeper representation of the town than anybody else, any other office does. So I don't think anybody had any solutions that they had in mind. I know you heard from the tax collector, I reached out to Primex today to ask if they had anything in the way of training they could do for us. It's our insurance carrier. We do have the new counter construction will happen starting just after the election in November. I think that's going to change the tone of things. It doesn't solve everything, but it'll make it feel different in there.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be glass or just a
Yep.
new?
Yeah, there's glass.
Yeah.
Bulletproof or impact proof?
It'll be, what's the shatterproof? What's the word? It's not going to produce shards, it'll produce chunks when it breaks.
Yeah.
What's that word?
Shard producer.
Safety glass.
Yeah,
Like
there's
car
a-
windows.
Yeah.
But it's thick, right? It's like,
Yeah, there's a
like,
word for
yeah.
it. Anyway, it'll look a lot like a bank, old school bank window.
Yeah.
It's tall, it's going to be not all the way to the ceiling, but above head height, down to just above the counter height. So it's a very clear physical separation.
Yeah. So I think there just had to be some clarity around the use of the panic button and what
Yeah.
that actually triggers, and also the suggestion that people should err on the side of using it too frequently rather than not using it.
Yep.
Don't.
Just if you don't know, we have in a number of places, including that office in the building, we have little panic buttons that alert dispatch that we need a cop. So it goes right to dispatch. Dispatch is one of our officers, and sets off this horrific sounding horn in the building. It sounds kind of like a fire alarm, but not really. So those are already in place. That's as far as we got today.
Yeah.
But we're certainly open to other suggestions.
Do you think that new counter and the glass is an adequate mitigation?
Well, it's definitely an improvement. It is a physical separation that is going to be hard for somebody to beat. Nothing is unbeatable. It's not bulletproof or bomb-proof or crazy things happen. So I think it will change the feeling of that space quite a bit in terms of how secure it feels.
Yeah.
And it will be significantly more. I mean, it's going to have an actual door where right now there's just a swinging piece of plywood.
Right.
You have to be, you have to key in to get in there. So it's going to be a significant improvement. adequate,
I'm just thinking from the point of view of somebody's yelling and screaming in your face versus someone's yelling and screaming at you, but they're on the other side of a high counter and a glass wall. Changes the threat level or the perceived threat level, you know.
Yeah. All right. Just wait for Ben. Do we finish those? You don't need anything else from us, right?
no, but we have non-public stuff that we
Oh, okay,
need to touch on.
okay.
Personnel, A.
What happened to our sheet? Okay, I'll take a motion to go into non-public.
Hey, you said?
Yeah.
Make a motion that we enter into non-public per RSA 91-A:32A.
Second.
Roll call.
Hi, Ben Bartlett.
I, Charlene Anderson.
Aye, Donna Danus.
Aye, Tony Dumas.
Given that there's no further business, when we come out of non-public, we will adjourn the public meeting.